presentation of results from Alan Burns and Associates' third annual study of women's perception and behavior as regards radio, music, and new media. I'm Alan Burns, and Jeff Johnson will be here with us this afternoon. And our goal is over the next 50 to 60 minutes, give you some information to think about, some insights into what women are all about. We all know that's a tough process to go through, finding out for men, and some information you can act on right away, hopefully. In case you're new to webinars or to GoToWebinar.com, I'll point out the control box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You can use that orange arrow up there to minimize the control box in order to see more of your screen, or you can open the control box and send us a question or a comment during the webinar. You can also tweet comments and questions to #BurnsStudy. We usually do get great questions, and at the end of the presentation today, we'll answer as many as time allows. We do these studies, this is now our third year, for two reasons. One is to develop some information that we keep confidential for the use of our clients and ourselves. That, of course, is the information we don't release publicly. And the other is to develop information for the benefit of the industry, which is the kind of information we're releasing in webinars like today's. Overall in this study, what we looked at was radio usage, attitudes toward the medium, how these things are changing, radio's digital efforts, competition, personalizable music streams, and how that's affecting us as an industry, Arbitron responders, music taste, and we'll take a good look at top 40 music taste today, radio's heaviest listeners, and what do women want. We'll take a stab at that. Every year we try to add to that storehouse of information. This is our biggest study by far this year, over 3,000 data points in the questionnaire, and we looked at it about almost 350 different ways. So we've got over 1 million discrete pieces of data, which of course is too much to put into any one presentation. So as usual, we've divided it up into 4 presentations. The first was industry headlines. That slide deck, if you missed the webinar, is available on burnsradio.com. Last week was radio's digital battle. That also is available on burnsradio.com. Today, of course, we'll go deep into top 40, and then we'll wrap up the series next Thursday with a look at Hot AC. We want to thank our friends at Triton Digital for making these webinars free. Unlike some companies and studies, you don't have to pay to get this information. Triton's a very good partner for us, and Michael Fisher, Triton's Senior VP of Engagement, is with us this afternoon. How are you, Michael?
Well, Alan, thank you for having us.
Great to have you with us. We've discovered, as we've worked with Triton, that they have a powerful polling engine, very powerful, and we'll be using that tool to conduct another, even more massive, if you can believe it, study for this fall's NAB radio show. Michael, that tool is also available to individual stations for their use, right?
Absolutely. It's called Immediate Insights, and what makes the tool so powerful is that it not only can be used internally on a station's own website, but it also takes and allows you to create research and for perceptual research that is mobile friendly as well as embeddable in social media. So it's one-click enterprise. It's a one-click enterprise solution that allows you to get in the path of your listeners wherever they are. We're thrilled that you've chosen us to partner with for your study for the NAB.
Thanks, Michael. I wanted to mention one thing. I noticed we've gotten a couple of comments about people seeing black bars on their screens. That is unfortunately a hopefully temporary problem that GoToWebinar.com is having. Something to do with compatibility between PowerPoint and their systems. And the black bars seem to be generated when either Jeff or I move our mouse. So we're going to try to keep our mice very quiet during today's presentation. But on the audience end, there's nothing you can do about it, and there's nothing wrong with your screen, so don't worry about it. Today's presentation and data: who is the top 40 listener? What can we learn about her? What are her attitudes? How does she use media, including radio, especially radio, of course? Music preferences. We'll look at top 40's heaviest listeners and how they're different. And we'll start with a look at the sample. Jeff, why don't you take this?
Great, thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. Appreciate your time. And before we dive into Top 40, quickly I want to look at who did we talk to. We spoke to over 2,000 women between the ages of 15 and 54 who had cumed an AC or a Top 40 radio station in the past week. We conducted these interviews online in May, and we used the national panels provided by SSI. And you may recognize SSI. They've provided data to Arbitron for years. So consequently, we talked to over 1,600 AC cumers and nearly 1,500 Top 40 cumers. We divided this into 5 regions, and you can see the list of markets here. One last thing before we jump into Top 40, I want to just spend a little bit of time defining a term that you'll hear me use during the presentation this afternoon, and that's heavy deeps. And heavy deeps is a term that was developed by DMR and the University of Wisconsin, I believe, in one of their white papers. And they noticed that there are specific listeners that contribute an inordinate amount of quarter hours to their P1 radio station that are heavy radio listeners and spend a majority of their time listening to their P1 station. So for the purposes of this study, we defined heavy deeps as those that spent an hour or more a day listening to radio overall, and at least 60% of that time listening to their P1 station. So these are obviously very important and valuable listeners to any radios in any format. So let's take a look at Top 40, and we always like to say, why are we doing this? And the important thing is that the more that she's understood, the more she listens. And here you can see the heavy deeps, these ultra fans. They're much more likely to agree with a statement that there's a station that really, really understands me. And so our goal for the next 30 minutes or so is to try to understand this female Top 40 listener so that we can appeal to her and consequently she can spend more time listening to us. So who is she? Let's take a look at the Top 40 audience. Overall, as we see, both CUME and T1 does skew younger. However, I do want to point out that there is nice penetration into the upper demos and even into the 35 plus. So it is indeed a mainstream format, both on a CUME and a P1 basis. We see overall that the CUME of Top 40 averages 29 compared to 32 overall. And Rhythmic Top 40 is the youngest with average age of 25. In terms of ethnicity, one thing that we see is that Top 40 does lean Hispanic, and this is the first time I've made reference to an index, and I will throughout this study. An index is just an easy way to compare two numbers, and for example, in this case, the Top 40 P1 is 29% more likely to be Hispanic than the total sample. And you can see that Rhythmic Top 40 P1s are twice as likely to be Hispanic than the overall sample. We look at relationships. They tend to be single. Fewer Top 40 listeners have children. You can see the indices there to the total, being single 39% more likely. We'll move into kind of a mindset of the female Top 40 listener, and we asked everyone in this survey on a scale of 1 to 10, with 0 being worried and stressed and 10 being optimistic and positive, what's your overall mood? The total sample you see there, and particularly the Top 40 P1s and the heavy deeps tend to be much more optimistic and positive, and especially compared to the ACP ones, which we'll spend more time on next week to delve into that. Why are they in a better mood? I think it's probably a bit of a chicken egg. Is it that Top 40 is a positive upbeat format and it draws then appeals to upbeat and positive people? Or is it that people that listen to this upbeat positive are put in a better mood? Probably a little bit of both. But no doubt, Top 40 is mood set for being positive, upbeat, and very optimistic. Continuing on with mindset, we asked a bunch of personal statements. And you can see the bottom two there. I tend to try new things, and I'm very interested in knowing other people, how they live their lives. Top 40 people tend to be very adventuresome and very social. You can see on the flip side that I'm pretty satisfied with the person I am right now. It's a little below average, but really we see that this is driven by age more than anything else, and that makes sense. The 15-24s are still growing up, still haven't figured out who they are, and so consequently they're not going to agree as strongly with the statement, I'm pretty satisfied with the person that I am. We took all this and we looked at what are those top 10 attributes that correlate strongest with being a top 40 P1. And other than the age and being single and Hispanic that I just touched on, I want you to take note of the other things. Texting, having tweeted in the past 24 hours, listening to radio on a mobile device, having internet access in a car. These top 40 P1s are very digitally active people. The other thing the other 2 points there that are interesting is listen to radio because people are entertaining, and they listen to radio to find out what music is popular. And I'm going to spend some more time with those 2 things in a few minutes. So we talked about who she is. Let's talk for a second about her attitudes towards radio in general. And the first thing is she seems to have a bit of a deeper bond with her favorite radio station than all women. She's 15% more likely to say that her favorite radio station's one of her best friends. I think to a large degree, this bond is based on the importance of personalities. We see that personalities on top 40 radio station and among top 40 fans is very important. You can see that they're 29% more likely to say, I listen to a radio station because people are entertaining. They like to hear funny stuff in the morning, and they think, for the most part, people on their favorite radio station are cool people. So personalities are important, and I think that it leads to then a deepened bond with their favorite radio station. Looking overall at some attitudes toward radio, pretty positive. We see that 85% would be disappointed if they couldn't listen to radio, and over 80% say they look forward to listening to radio. So again, very positive scores there. In terms of music on a top 40 radio station, again, I wanted to point out that I listened to find out what music is popular. If you remember, that was one of the top 10 attributes of a top 40 P1. And yes, they go to listen for their favorite songs or to hear the current music, but as much so, they go to find out what other people are listening to. It's that sense of community that top 40 provides that I think is driving passion with their favorite radio station as well. We also found out, looking at music, that new music is important. Nearly a third of these women said that discovering new music is very important. However, we also see that over 20% say they hear a song on the radio is completely new to them. So there is a gap there that I think we probably need to pay attention to and might want to look to see if we can narrow that gap. So we've talked about their attitude. Let's broaden it out a little bit and just talk about their media usage for a couple minutes. And first of all, let's take a look at what digital devices are they using, and how are they listening or watching or acquiring their media. 3/4 of all these top 40 women do own a smartphone now. Top 40 listeners are 32% more likely to have internet access in a car, and I expect that 16% will grow. It's something we'll watch. Over a third, 35% now have an iPad or other tablets, and iPod at 67%. If we look at iPod versus iPad, you know, wasn't it just a few short years ago that we all heard that iPod's going to destroy radio? Well, we're seeing that ownership and usage of iPod with these top 40 listeners really has leveled off, while iPad has more than doubled in the past year. So now we're going to, media usage, let's take a closer look at radio usage, and let's look at all the digital devices that they're using to listen to radio. You can see that listening to radio online and listening to radio on a mobile device has seen substantial growth from 2011 to 2010, and especially in TSL. TSL has just skyrocketed in the past year. Meanwhile, the traditional listening to radio on radio has shown some erosion. The weekly usage is down, while TSL is flat and maybe down a little bit. But the good news is, when you kind of add that all together, when you add radio on radio and radio on a mobile device and streaming your radio station, if you add that all together, it looks like radio usage among top 40 listeners is actually up year to year. And a lot of that is driven by TSL. When we look on a weekly basis, no real difference radio on radio in terms of the age. All of them are pretty much at the 85 to 88 range. When we look at radio online, we see again it's pretty consistent amongst all demos, but notice that the growth is primarily happening in the young end and the upper end, 35-44 growth from 33 to 44%. And then radio on a mobile, again, probably driven by the young and 25-34s, but consistent growth among all three demos. So that's radio usage. As we continue delving into their media, how about social media? And as we can all imagine, all top 40 listeners are using Facebook. 84% are using it on a weekly basis. But pay attention to Twitter and Pinterest. Top 40 fans are 23% more likely to use Twitter on a weekly basis. We also looked at Google Plus for the first time. They just kind of put it on the map, and it came in at a respectable 26%, and top 40 fans are driving that at 17% more likely. When we look at social media usage by demo, we see, again, everyone's using Facebook, pretty even between young and old on Facebook. Twitter is being driven by the 15 to 24-year-olds. And Pinterest, likewise, is pretty even, but slightly higher among 25-34s. And we'll have some interesting data on that, again, next week in our AC presentation to see the level of interest of Pinterest and usage of Pinterest with those listeners. So we even see that these top 40 heavy deeps are very socially active. And not only socially active, but socially active with their radio station. These top 40 heavy deeps are 36% more likely to have liked the station on Facebook and 77% more likely to have ever responded to a station's Facebook post. So we've looked at radio usage, social media usage. How about custom music streams? And again, first thing, let's look at year-to-year data. We do see increases in daily and weekly usage. But again, TSL is the real growth area for custom music streams. In terms of looking at the competitive landscape there, here's the top 10 players in the custom music stream arena. You can see it's dominated by YouTube and Pandora at the top. It is interesting to note that iHeart is a respectable third in QUME and Listen Most. If we focus a little bit more on iHeart, and especially compared to Pandora for a second, here's the growth from 2011 to 2012 for Pandora. First of all, you see that it does dominate, 88% awareness, 69% QUME. But notice that really the growth from 11 to 12 has really leveled off. Meanwhile, when we lay in iHeartRadio, awareness has grown substantially. QUME has more than doubled, and likewise with most listens. Again, it kind of shows and points out to me that when radio puts its mind to it, we can move mountains. Now we've looked at media usage. Let's focus in a little bit deeper on radio listening and specifically the different types of top 40. What are they listening to out there? Well, first of all, let's take a look at weekly QUME, and we have a 3-year trend here where you can see the mainstream top 40 does lead in terms of QUME. Hot AC is growing. Rhythmic top 40 is holding its own, and I would say the same for mainstream AC. On a P1 basis, on a 3-year trend, We can see that mainstream top 40 is leading the pack. Again, hot AC is growing, and we'll spend quite a bit more time next week talking about why that is. Rhythmic top 40 does look like it's declining over the 2 years here. And a quick note on mainstream AC, it's stable there, and I think there's a lot of people that think that this is a struggling format, and we're seeing that it's holding its own. By region, West Coast is driven by rhythmic top 40 P1 appeal. The Northeast, a little spike there with mainstream top 40. Pretty consistent in the other 3 regions. So we've talked about their listening habits. Alan, why don't you talk a little bit about, especially looking at some of these PPM winners and their station images?
Sure, Jeff. The question we asked ourselves and thought we would show everybody that was interested is, what are the images that set winning top 40s apart from their competition? We looked at top 40s all over the country in every market we studied, and decided that for today's presentation we'd focus on the 3 largest markets. At the time of the study, the top 40 winners in those markets were KISS in Los Angeles, Z100 New York, and B96 in Chicago. That's not to say, by the way, that their top 40 competitors were losers, because those are pretty successful stations in their own right. But we thought, let's look at what the difference between the #1 top 40 and the #2 top 40 station is. And we did that by giving all the respondents a series of statements to complete with the station that fit best. For example, what station plays the best current popular songs? And these numbers that we're going to show are the percentages among the station's own cume or the group's own cume. For example, the winners column are the cumes of Z100, KISS, and B96. The non-winners are the other 3 top 40s in those 3 markets. These are ranked, by the way, from top to bottom by the #1 through last image for the winners. #1, probably no surprise, best current popular songs. It's the top image for the winners, and the non-winners, the other stations, are not that far behind. The 3rd column there shows gap. There's a 6-point gap, and the last column is an index. That index means that the size of the answer for winners is 22% larger than the non-winners. So there is a difference there. It's not as big as I thought we'd see. #2 for the winners was an image that people sometimes think is a negative image, and that is the station that repeats songs so often that they become annoying. Well, that's the core of top 40, repeating the hits. And also, one of the things that if you haven't seen by now, you'll find out is that winning stations have a larger share of mind. They often have a larger cume, but this is controlled within the cume. Winning stations have a larger share of mind, so they get mentioned more often for everything. And they also get listened to more often due to that larger share of mind. Here comes one of the big answers right here. The station with the most entertaining morning show, 2-to-1 winners over non-winners. That is the biggest difference. That 212 index that you see on the right is the largest number that we'll see on these indexes. That is the biggest difference for the winners in favor of the winners. Followed not far behind by the station that you see at a lot of events or in advertising. Once again, that's that share of mind issue, and the winner's share of mind expressed this way is 80% higher than the other stations. Too many interruptions. The winners win this. Just comes along with the big established entertaining morning show. Best music for my taste. Here's a surprise. Almost identical images for both groups of radio stations. Now, on one hand, that might not be too surprising because you don't get to the point of programming or being the music director at a station like AMP in Los Angeles or one of the other large market top 40s without knowing pretty much what you're doing with music. So it doesn't look like in these 3 markets, the winner's not winning necessarily on better music. It's got some other images that are doing the job. Best to listen to at work is pretty insignificant for top 40 and identical between the two groups. And here comes the one area where the non-winners win. A lot of music without a lot of talk, about a 2-to-1 gap from the non-winners. So if you don't have an established high-profile morning show, you attack on more music. So here we have it. The big difference for the winners is entertaining morning show. That's the biggest difference, I would say. And the strategy for the other guys is lots of music without a lot of talk. And I'll point out also, by the way, with the size of these images, and especially this image here, the station you see at a lot of events and advertising, share of mind is important in every market. These aren't these aren't diary keeper markets that we're looking at. These are PPM markets. So these markets aren't measuring recall, but share of mind is helping to drive more listening. So there's the image difference between number 1 and number 2 CHRs. Moving on to music tastes in the top 40 audience. Every year we profile the music taste via a number of montages. Some of them are standardized, and we test the same styles each year, and every year we rotate in and out a couple of other things to check. Each of the styles is represented by 2 3-song montages. 6 seconds of each of 3 songs is a montage. The audience is not, we'll show you here some examples. The pop style, 3 of the 6 songs that represented pop are shown here. The respondents were not given any verbal descriptions. We didn't call this the pop montage. We didn't tell them titles or artists. All they responded to were the songs they heard. Okay, so the styles we checked. Pop, the kind of pop that crosses over to hot AC, but not generally mainstream AC. Soft pop, the kind of pop that top 40 and soft ACs will play. Pop rhythm, that's a top 40 staple. Hot AC has been playing more and more of it lately. Then we decided to, last year we tested just a group of 2000s gold songs. This year we split it into 2 kinds of 2000s gold. Pop gold, Katy Perry and Kelly Clarkson, etc., and rhythmic gold, Florida, Nelly, etc. And then finally, we looked at hip-hop. And we've had some requests, quite a few requests actually, to look back into the 90s. So we look at 90s hip-hop as represented by Tupac and Snoop Dogg, and then current hip-hop represented by the kind of songs you see here. And we've already had a question I noticed while Jeff was talking. Someone asked that when listeners indicated they like to listen to songs from the past, how far back do they mean? Well, that answer actually varies with each individual. We're trying to make generalizations, of course, and we'll see if some of the response to the 2000s and 90s music here helps you answer that question for yourself. So here are the styles that have been tested each of the 4 years against the top 40 Q. Number 1 is pop, which is strong always and a little bit stronger than ever this year. Pop rhythmic continues to grow. Soft pop is stronger than it ever was in the past. Sorry, not stronger than last year, but stronger than it was in 2010. So it's been strong, great numbers for 2 years in a row. And then hip-hop, current hip-hop. You see that it fell from 2010 to 11 and then just fell off the table, cut in half in 2012. And that we think, and I'm sure we're not alone, is the biggest change in top 40 and is responsible for a lot of top 40's recent rating surge because the format has become more pop and more broadly accessible to mother and daughter listening. So net result on top 40 has been good. So given this year's numbers, here's how all of these styles rank. The blue bars are top 40 QM, red bars are top 40's P1s, and these styles from left to right are ranked on QM scores. But I want to call your attention to the P1 scores. When you do, you see that there's sort of 3 levels of songs here. The first level is pop and pop rhythm at about a 3.9 to 3.95 to a 4, basically. Next level is 3 styles that are in the 3/7s. Soft pop, 2000s pop, and 2000s rhythmic gold. So with top 40 fans in general, looking back into the 2000s is not a bad thing. It's certainly not going to drive the format, but there's a fair amount of interest in it. And then the third laggard level is both kinds of hip-hop. That changes a little bit when you look at it by subgenre of top 40, of course. Here's the top styles in order with mainstream top 40 P1s. And that's pretty much what the overall format looks like, because mainstream is now the dominant style and accounts for more bodies in this study as a result. And obviously that'll change a little bit when you isolate the rhythmic top 40 P1s. There, hip-hop jumps up to number 1, as it always does in that format. 90s hip-hop has a place in rhythmic top 40, not in mainstream. 2000s rhythmic gold does well in both places. Pop gold, of course, not in rhythmic top 40. Soft pop, not as good in rhythmic top 40. But pop rhythmic is strong in both, and even pop does pretty well in rhythmic top 40. Then when we add in hot AC P1s for comparison, we see that mainstream top 40 and hot AC share the same top 4 styles. They're in slightly different orders, and pop rhythm does quite a bit better in mainstream than in hot AC, but it's the same 4 styles of music, and really in many ways, because this is why both formats are doing so well in the ratings lately. Both formats are focusing on, with slightly different emphasis, the same kind of music, which is very centrist and very pop right now. Back to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Alan. I want to talk for a couple seconds here about contesting. Top 40 radio stations tend to spend quite a bit of time on air conducting contests, and overall we find that's probably the right thing to do. We see that while the top 40 CUME is about on average with have they entered in the past year, those heavy deeps are 22% more likely to have entered a contest in the past year. And the real answer is that top line. These Arbitron actual participants, and yes, in the course of talking to over 2,000 women, we have isolated some that are actual Arbitron participants. They're 55% more likely to have entered a contest in the past year. So contesting does play, I think, an important role in top 40 to expand the brand. Part of it is we asked them, what would drive you to enter a contest? And we asked them a bunch of different prizes. And $1,000, 56% said they'd be likely to enter a contest if they could win $1,000. $5,000, that jumps up to 62. $10,000, it jumps up to 72%, so incremental growth there. However, we also asked them, how about if you could win a year's supply of gas? And you see that 65% is actually higher than the $5,000. And we place value of a year's worth of gas at about $2,500. So pretty good use of money if you look at what would entice people to enter $5,000 or a year's worth of gas. We talked about morning radio and the importance of that with top 40, so I want to spend a little bit of time just looking at what top 40 fans are doing in the morning. First of all, what time do they wake up? Well, on average, she generally wakes up at 7 a.m. That's a little later than I would have imagined, but remember, it is an average. We separated this by age, and part of that is due to, well, the teenagers sleep in as long as humanly possible. The 20 to 24s are still hungover, so they sleep in a little bit more. And then once you reach 25, you have a job and you got to get up early again. So part of this is driven by age. We also wanted to look at what is she doing before she leaves home in the morning, and we're going to focus in on the 15 to 24-year-olds here because we see that they get up and they make themselves breakfast first, but then they text, get online, they check their email, Facebook, and then they turn on the television. But look how digitally active they are in the morning. After maybe they turn on TV, maybe they'll feed their pets, and then about 28% said they turn on a radio. I'd like to see radio be a little bit higher on this ranking. Household chores and make someone else breakfast kind of rounds it out. So 28% say they turn on the radio. Well, how about that other 72%? Why don't they listen to radio in the morning? We see the top two reasons there is no time, I'm just too busy, and geez, I just don't think about it. And my analysis of that is shame on us. We either haven't developed enough compelling content to make them want to come to the radio, or we haven't told them about what it is we're doing. And that's a large part of it is again, that share of mind. And we need to do a better job of telling them what we're doing on morning radio to help drive them. But, just not thinking of it is I think, an avenue that we've got to look at, because there is compelling compelling content on the radio in the morning. And we did ask them, what do you want to hear or see when you first wake up in the morning? And from the bottom up, Hollywood gossip, celebrity gossip. I was kind of surprised to see this at the bottom. I think about every top 40 station that I listen to in the morning does this feature, and yet its appeal is the low end of the spectrum. Still decent appeal. Overall, you're looking at nearly 50% said it's somewhat or very desirable. Going up the list, there are some service elements like traffic and news, daily reminders of what they need to do for the day. People having fun. We talked earlier about how important personalities are, and especially in morning. Interesting conversation goes along with that. There's service elements again. There are some that want some softer music, just not to be jolted out of bed. Something motivating or inspirational. I think that's one of the surprises I saw out of mornings. Now, part of this may go with the top 40 is that positive, upbeat, optimistic format. But I think they also, just like to get their day started on a positive note. And there may be room for growth there. And then the top two things they say they want, something funny and upbeat music. Again, it's the mood set of top 40. I refer to it as the audio caffeine to help them get their day started. So upbeat music. And then something funny. They want to have some fun. Personalities, again, is so very important for this format. And why do we talk about morning listeners? Well, this makes sense, but I think it's important to point out that those that spend time listening to the radio and morning drive also have the highest TSL overall. So if we hook them in the morning, they'll tend to stay with us throughout the day. One last thing before we take some questions and comments. We did ask all these women, if the election were held today, who would you vote for, Mitt or Barack? And I can tell you now that no need to have the election in November, because according to the top 40 women, Barack Obama in a landslide. However, we will see next week. Alan's going to show these results among AC listeners, and I think you'll find some surprising results. So let's recap briefly here. What have we learned today? Well, these top 40 heavies, they're very social media driven. Pinterest is the big significant social media for top 40 P1s. Contests do attract not only top 40 fans, but ratings participants. Pop and pop rhythm continue to dominate popularity in top 40 music. Hip-hop appeal is declining. Personalities are so very important to the top 40 audience and the formats. And these 15 to 24-year-olds start the day very digitally. So there we have it. Alan, have you been monitoring questions? Any questions we want to deal with there?
We do, Jeff, definitely. First question I think that came in was about Slacker. And the question was on the internet music streams data that we showed, where is Slacker? And I looked that up while you were talking there, and Slacker was just below the awareness threshold that we cut the table off at. I'll give you the numbers. I'm not sure whose question this was, but I'll give you the numbers really quickly. Slacker's awareness was 16.2, Cume was 7%, and Listen Most was 1.3%. And if you're, in case you're a Slacker fan or somehow invested in Slacker professionally or financially or emotionally, people say they're listening more to Slacker than they were a year ago. Another question here, do listeners like to know which songs specifically are coming up during a music sweep? Would that help keep them around? We didn't ask that question this year. That's an interesting question, and one of the things that we always do when we prepare these surveys is look at past questions that people have asked us that we didn't include, and so we'll put that in the pile for next year. Any insight on top 40 night show hosts? That's not in the data either. Jeff, any particular flashes of insight on top 40 night show hosts?
Well, again, just the point of, upbeat, have fun, and I think I always use the analogy that to a large degree I hear a lot of top 40s yelling at their audience, and I don't know about you, Alan, but the last time I yelled at my wife, I didn't get the desired results.
Doesn't work for me either.
So I think that there is you got to be careful at night, especially. There's a distinction between being upbeat and yelling at the audience.
Good point. Good point. Let's see. Sorry, question just arrived on top of the one I was about to answer. Here's one of the questions. You mentioned Arbitron panelists. Are there any other observations about their behavior worth sharing? Well, we talked about Arbitron panelists in, I think it was the very first of these presentations, the industry headlines a couple of weeks ago. But the things that stand out for me about Arbitron panelists are that there are two primary motives for them to cooperate with rating surveys, whether it's Arbitron or anybody else. One is for the cash, the prizes, the rewards, the points. They are tangibly motivated, which goes along with, every year we ask women what they want most between, the choices essentially are sex, money, time, or a better relationship, and the answer keeps coming back money. So these people are looking for money. Another thing about Arbitron panelists and heavy radio listeners, both of them like knowing or at least believing that their opinions matter. So when a radio station solicits its listener opinions and does something to confirm that it's heard and paying attention to them, it's making itself more attractive both to heavy listeners and to Arbitron panelists. There was a question about afternoon drive. I gotta pull that up really quickly here. Wow, a lot of questions have come in. I've lost that one. I'll try to get back to it. Here's one. Since people are listening, since more people are listening to radio station streams on their cell phones, would they prefer or would it make a difference if it was by way of a radio chip or not? Did not ask that question. However, in 2010, the first year that we started these questions, we asked people if they would be more likely to buy a phone that had an activated radio chip in it, and the answer was yes. So we are about to, we continue to have conversations with the NAB to try to help that process get going. But in the meantime, as we showed last week, Jeff, I think it was 2/3 or more of all radio listening on a cell phone right now is via a radio station app. Is that what was that our number last week, Jeff?
2/3, correct. Those are the total sample. Yep.
Okay. All right. Was there a specific reason as to why hip-hop's appeal is dropping? Well, you know, it's always chicken or the egg. Did the product quality go down and then the appeal go down, or did people just lose their interest in hip-hop? You know, I can only sort of offer editorial opinion. I think the quality to some extent has gone down, but then again, people like fresh sounds, and it's got to the point that hip-hop was not at all a fresh sound. Well, you guys are, this is great. We're being sort of inundated with questions here, and it keeps bumping the screen up, so I lose the question I was about to answer. And I can't find it, but somebody, oh, here we are. Any information on listener habits or thoughts on PM Drive, which recently we're seeing has by far the largest overall cume of any day part? Well, off the top of my head, and Jeff, chime in with this if you would, Morning Drive, which was in the past always the biggest day part when we were in the diary world, was inflated somewhat by recall and colorful, flamboyant favorite personalities that you listen to habitually and or like to support got some inflation in the recall-based diary function. And now that we're seeing actual recorded behavior, I think one of the things that's happening to Morning Drive as compared to PM Drive is we're just seeing how much competition we've got in the morning, and to some extent, and I hate to say this, we're seeing that we're not, as an industry, doing a great job in Morning Drive. The digital trend is also affecting us. People are much more likely to check Facebook, go online, text somebody, check their cell phone for news and information, including, for example, is school open today, or do I have to go to work today, what's my schedule, before they listen to radio. So PM Drive, a lot of people are in the car. That's when half or more of radio listening occurs, and we don't have quite the same competition in afternoon drive. So that's my best shot. Jeff?
Yeah, and I agree. I think in car, I think in addition to all the other things that they're doing, watching TV or digital, also, think we asked, a big long list of what do you do in mornings when you first wake up, and make breakfast and dress the kids and feed the dogs and do chores, and so not only is it a crowded arena in terms of all the other media options that are out there, but there's just a lot going on to get prepared for the day every day as well, and so that tends to, I think, squeeze the time that people have to devote to radio in the morning drive.
Very good. And Jeff, while I start this next question, you might want to look up something. One of the questions was, could you repeat, and once again, it's gone away, could you repeat the content priority? I think it was second slide or second to last slide. Mm-hmm. You have a chance, Jeff.
I can do that.
While you're looking for that, how do listeners feel about the amount of talk from personalities? Mornings versus the rest of the day, question mark. Thanks, Bill. How do they feel about the amount of talk? I don't know that we necessarily measured that directly in this year's study, but this has been a topic of conversation inside our company for a couple of years or more now, and that is that in PPM world, radio is in many ways doing the right thing for the short term and the wrong thing for the long term. The right thing for the short term seems to shut everybody up, but for the long term, that's just making us more and more a jukebox, and we're less distinct from other ways that you can get song after song after song. So that's, Bill, that's just an editorial opinion. Thanks for the question. Jeff, anything on that from your end?
No, I think you covered it, and I did want to address, repeating those features in morning. First of all, I can't remember, Alan, if you mentioned, we will have this slide deck available for everyone to download on our website, which is burnsradio.com, and it will be available starting tomorrow morning. So I know I did go through many of those charts pretty quickly to try to save on time. So you will be able to download it and look at all of it. And again, in terms of those features in Morning Drive, upbeat music was first, followed by something funny, followed by something motivating or inspirational, softer music, weather, interesting conversation, people having fun, daily reminders, news, traffic, and then Hollywood or celebrity gossip.
Very good. Speaking of morning show content, someone here says celebrity gossip ranked last or next to last in that ranker, but stations seem very stoked to give it to their audience. And Ron, I agree with you. Stations are all over the place, very stoked to do it. I think to some extent, this may be one area where people say one thing and do another. Celebrity gossip, being into gossip. By the way, my assistant Molly's sitting here in the room with me, and Molly just made a face when I said that, confirming my theory. It's a secret pleasure. Gossip? Oh no, I'm not a gossip. But gosh, what's happening with who's having an affair with whom right now? Yeah, that's a big deal. And we don't see it showing up as a high appeal item. We also didn't see traffic showing up as that high appeal an item, but radio stations do traffic all over the place in the morning. And on a station-by-station basis, looking at PPMs around the country, celebrity gossip is neither a guaranteed home run nor a disaster. It's all over the place, and I really think that it's a function of execution. Celebrity gossip, there's nothing much unique about celebrity gossip. You can get it everywhere. But some stations and some personalities do a better job and have a lot of fun with it, and then some other places it's just a report of something you can get in 15 other places.
And I agree. I think a lot of it is execution. I will also say, and I'm going to show somewhat my age, I always hid the National Enquirer when I was waiting in line at the checkout stand to buy it. It is one of those guilty pleasures.
What's the National Enquirer, Jeff?
Yeah. Once upon a time.
Okay, somebody comments from Tracy Austin. Yes, you are not supposed to text while driving. We have their attention in afternoons. Yes, very good. Let's see. Interesting question. Cell phone tuning. Since we're starting to see so much cell phone listening and such growth from P1s, is data an issue? And I think what the person who sent that one in meant is bandwidth and cost an issue. And I think it's going to be. And I think I believe I said this last week in the digital presentation. I think as Verizon and AT&T, et cetera, move away from unlimited data plans, it's going to start costing you actual money the more you listen to either radio or custom music streams on your cell phone, including in your car. It's going to cost you money. And we have seen, in last year, for example, we demonstrated that women are generally just not willing to pay to listen to music online or on their cell phone. And after we showed that, maybe not because we showed it, but not more than a couple of months later, that's when Pandora announced that they were going to discontinue their focus on pay for listening, not commercial-free subscription plans. So that changed. They changed their business model right there. So when listening to radio over your cell phone or online streams, other streamers like Pandora, et cetera, starts costing you money, at that point, over-the-air radio is going to look real nice again, nicer than it used to be, because it's still free.
I think obviously bandwidth and data, someone's going to have to pay for it. So that's the million-dollar question: is who's going to have to incur that cost down the line? And if it's too much for the consumer, that's just going to change this playing field all the way around.
Mm-hmm. Another question here: what percentage of your sample was stay-at-home women versus working women? I was just working on next week's presentation earlier today, and I think the answer is about 45% of adult women, no, 50% of adult women are employed away from home. It's adult women. This total sample is 15 to 54, and the CHR focus is a little younger than that, so it's probably in the high 30s with this. We can definitely look that up. Jason, if you wouldn't mind dropping either Jeff or I an email, either Jeff at Burns Radio or Alan at Burns Radio, we'll be happy to look that answer up and give it to you. I know that answer is in next week's presentation, by the way. Here's a question, and Michael Fisher, if you're still with us, might want you to chime in on this based on the conversation you and I had yesterday. The comment or the question is, due to Twitter and Facebook's instant newsbreaker, I feel like it's important for us to report the celebrity gossip immediately on social networks. Now, I can't tell if that means from social networks or on our social posts, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Michael, you still here with us?
Yeah, I am. I'm here.
Okay. You were talking yesterday about we were having a conversation about the digital nature of listeners in the morning especially. You want to kind of expound on that a bit?
Yeah, we in our research have found almost the exact same results that you have, and it's definitely shifts by age and demo. So what you presented today for 15 to 24s is dead on, that they are checking their social media streams long before, and email long before they get to your radio station in the morning. And one of the things that we're advising clients is that they should be more conscientious starting at 4:30 in the morning about tweeting and Facebooking things that are going to be on the morning show. And that messaging can actually, if it's a compelling reason, and it's all about relevancy, by the way, how relevant is the message across the board with anything social. But the issue becomes you can actually repeat that message a number of times for a 3 to 4 hour period starting a morning drive. So if you have something on your morning show that's really compelling that you're going to be talking about, don't be afraid to repost the same comment, the same content multiple times between, say, 4:30 and 6:30 or 4:30 and 7:30 in the morning. Because as you showed, Alan, people are waking up at the latest possible point about 7:30. So if they're waking up and checking their cell phone for updates or their Twitter account, it's good that you have something in your social stream to them starting early. But again, the whole key to messaging your audience via social is keeping it relevant. So really, it's not about, it might not be about a promotion. It might be about a breaking news story that's local. It might be about school closures. It might be about, celebrity gossip. It's just keep the messages relevant. And by the way, the other thing we have found is people don't mind how many times you correspond with them throughout the day, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter, as long as the messaging is relevant, which means that some days you may be tweeting or posting on Facebook more than other days. It's okay. Just keep it relevant and you'll keep people engaged.
Great. Thank you for that, Michael. Another question is, how do women feel about men versus women on-air talent? And again, I don't believe that we don't have any direct data on that from this study. From other pieces of data we've seen, I think it's not so. The question is not men versus women; it's entertaining versus not. Jeff, any further thoughts on that?
Well, exactly. It's about understanding the audience, and there's plenty of men that work hard at trying to understand their audience, even if it is female-based. So, it's just on the heels of what Michael just said. It is all about relevancy.
Very good. Well, this might be a good question to end on because it's almost impossible to answer. Is there a breakdown of what funny means to the end user? Jeff, that's all yours.
Gee, thanks. I don't know that the answer is no. There is no way to break it down. I've always said that really a morning show's job is not to be funny; it's to be fun. Because
Perfect.
as soon as you try to be funny, there's nothing worse than that comedian that's up on stage is telling jokes and he's not funny. You want to hide under your table because you're embarrassed for him. So if you try to be funny, I think you're destined for failure. I think the important thing is to be fun and then they'll communicate to you what is funny about that.
Excellent. And we're actually running overtime now, so we're probably going to have to stop here in a minute. But one last question, we'll let Michael answer it. Any suggestion how long to wait between posts on Facebook or Twitter?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. I get the question about how long to wait and how long. And I would generally say a morning drive. If you know that your audience is waking up at 7:30 and you know they're going to check the post, if you post once an hour, you'll probably be good. Especially the way the new timelines work. You know, it used to be, particularly on Facebook, if you went to the page, everything would move up. Now things stay static. I think the real answer to that question is if the messaging is relevant, you can post as much as you want without being a nuisance. Again, you're going to ebb and flow as the information that you're putting out is relevant. So one day, you may post 3 times in an hour. The next day, you might not post at all. The next day, you may post 2.
So here's a softball question for you, Michael. How often is too often to post station liner and promotions?
Yeah, well, you know, look, you know, here's the thing about social that's really important to take into account. People in the social world, people know when they're gamed. People have gotten far more astute about gaming now than ever before, and they know that they easily fall for the trick of like this page, register for the contest. They become very astute, and they know what their odds are of winning. I think that what you need to do is through on-air support, through email support, through social support, you make posting on social part of your strategy and don't do it too much. And the other thing is see how people respond. Look at your Facebook insights, look at your Twitter responses and retweets, and that will really begin to tell you how relevant the message is, and in turn will probably give you some indication as to how much you can get away on posting promotions.
Very good.
So you have performance indicators here that will help that you can see.
Good.
Again, it's all about relevancy.
Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome.
Alan, why don't we end with just for everyone what to look forward to next week. Next week is our final webinar, and we're going to take a deep dive into AC and hot AC. We're going to look at how the AC audience is changing, what's spurring the growth of hot AC, where's that line where top 40 ends and hot AC begins. We'll look at these winning images at AC and hot AC like we did today for top 40. What are the best and worst workplaces to target? And a close look at what women listen to when their kids are in the car. So very interesting stuff.
And that's coming up next week. Don't forget, by the way, that today's slide deck and the previous 2 weeks' slide decks will be posted on burnsradio.com tomorrow morning, as will a link to a recording of this webinar on YouTube. If you'd like to review it or play it or share it with any friends, feel free. Thanks again for spending so much of your time today. I know everybody's really, really busy, and giving us an hour is an honor. Thank you again.
Thank you.